Vicentiu, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you very much for having me.
This is the first edition of our new project called GPS Talks, when you're gonna host specialists from the sports industry, football industry like you, to talk to us about topics that are quite important for health, for career of players. And so if someone is watching that, like just explaining that I'm Gustavo Spanholi, I'm the founder and CEO of Global Player Solutions that is hosting this first edition of GPS Talks. And we are very honored to have Vicentiu Ostafi, who is mental performance coach of Dinamo Bucharest in Romania. And I will start, Vicentiu, asking you to tell you about your background that is very interesting. Just a spoiler, I know that you started as a diplomat and then tell how you ended in sports and what inspired you to become a mental performance coach.
Okay, first of all, let me thank you again for inviting me. And it's an honor to be at the first edition of GPS Talks. And I'm looking forward to following the podcast later on to see what other guests you'll have. Going back to your question, well, I'll go back a little bit more than the diplomacy part because it started, my passion for football started when I was a kid and I was playing football. And I was quite a skillful, let's say, number 10, identifying spaces and playing between the lines. But at the same time, I was more of a shy and introverted player. And back then, I didn't find the support that I was needed to develop my skill, to encourage me to perform, to focus on the things that I can control and not on the things that were outside of my control. And I decided to quit football because of that. So I went studying. I ended up, like you said, working diplomacy, being a diplomat for almost 9 years, being posted in several countries abroad. But my passion for football dragged me back. And I thought how I can bring value to this beautiful game that we love. And I went back to the type of support that I needed when I was young. And I thought, oh, okay, so I'm seeing a lot of players with huge potential, but not all of them make it to the big stage. So I identified that it's something there. It's something related to the mental part. And I saw more player needed the type of support that I needed when I was young. And I started studying, exploring this field, taking courses. And after 1 year and a half almost of studying and developing strategies, I started working with football players, football clubs, and here I am today.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, when the passion is so strong, I think I have, in this aspect, I have a similar story as you. Like, it drags you into the industry and it's quite addictive. And we are lucky to be here and be able to work what we are passionate about. And very interesting. Thank you. And my next question would be like, how do you do to identify a target, to approach a player, and what's your initial conversation with a player, and what you propose to him in terms of just a brief idea about your methodology and how do you are the first interactions with a player?
Well, at the beginning it was more challenging because even now, mental coaching is not that well spread. I mean, there aren't so many players. I mean, you cannot say that more than 20-25% of players understand the value and how it can help increase performance. So at the beginning it was a bit challenging, but afterwards started working with players, seeing results, working with club as Dinamo Bucharest who saw results. It started to become more of a word of mouth thing. And the player are starting to be interested in identifying how can mental approach or my personal mental approach can help them improve their game. And speaking about methodology, well, my personal approach lies on 3 pillars. One, the first one is related to personal development and basically installing a consistency on the development plan of the players on the 4 pillars: physical, technical, tactically, and mentally. So my core value is 1% per day equals 365% per year. And I'm trying to install this in the players with whom I'm working. Basically, what they do extra every day in order to become 1% better. Because you need to take advantage of every chance that you can to become better than the guy next to you. And I'm seeing football as being the game of these small margins. So you just, as a football player, you need to make sure you do everything that's in your possibility in order to become a little bit better. The second pillar of my approach is related to in-game flow, because basically your skills are inside you. But what is different between the moment you exhibit those skills on the pitch and the times you don't? So in most of the time, it's related to the mental part, playing this flow state, playing without thinking. Because if you ask 90% of the player, they will, how do you score this beautiful goal or manage this beautiful assist? They will say, I was not thinking, I was just reading the play and it just happened. So that means playing in flow. And it's a state that you can train in order to get in this flow state or to regain it after you lost it. Because during the games, there are multiple factors that take you off your flow state. Teammates, opponents, referees, coaches, bad passes, missed chances, a lot of them. And if you manage to regain flow state much faster, you start performing better again. And the third pillar of my approach, it's related to off-the-pitch challenges. Because there are times when players don't perform not because of situations related with football, but because of personal situations. And you can include here also the mental health part, dealing with families, dealing with, I don't know, fans, agents, a lot of things that happen around the players. The bigger the level, the more of the challenges of the pitch that he faces. This is why I discover working with players. So those are the three main areas I'm focusing on.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds good. Just a question that I have, like, have you started working with the club, or you started to work with individual players and then it led you to a role in the club?
At the beginning, well, I think the first two players with whom I work and the time I signed the contract with Dinamo was more or less similar. Yeah. A couple of months before I started working with two players, and then actually now in January it will be 1 year since I start working with Dinamo.
My next question is how do you start to see some results, and how do you see players improving their mental performance after you start working with them? And you feel free to tell case studies, tell examples. I think it's interesting because we have players also, current clients, and other players that watch this Q&A, and they can be interested on that.
This is an interesting question because when it comes to the mental part, there are no specific KPIs. Okay, we can discuss about increasing market values or football performance metrics like scoring goals or assists after started working. Those are okay, and we are looking at this, but at the same time, it's really important the feedback that the players provides.
Yes.
Or the person with whom you are working. Because if he manages, we can talk about situation like case studies. I was working with a player who lost his passion for football. And that was the reason he contacted me. Like, I feel even though he was playing at top level, he was not feeling the love for football anymore. So we needed to understand the root of the problem and how to bring that back, that feeling. And we use for in-game flow with some kind of anchors, like mental checks. We identify the moments when he loved to play football and what happened then. And we started bringing back some routines from that period. And slowly his mood changes. He was more positive in training. He started to enjoy more. And then goals start to pop up, assists start to pop up, and everything shifted from that moment on. So this is an example. Another example that I can give you, it's about external pressure, like pressure for family. Again, I was working with a player who not necessarily the family was putting pressure of him, but it was internal pressure for him to play at a level where he can support his family and show his family that all the sacrifice that they did for him were not in vain. So we shifted the perspective from being something that actually froze him this thinking on this frozen during games, and he was not playing in flow. He was starting to become selfish or angry on his teammates that they didn't pass to him. And we started changing this to small things that he can do in order to be a team player, in order to understand that being a team player increases the chances of him performing better, and afterwards the result being him providing for his family. Also related to his family, we switch his mindset to one related to gratitude, where instead of being frozen of the fact of the pressure that his family did everything for him, to be grateful for this and to see it as his foundation, his superpower, that he has this beautiful family that manages to do this for him. And again, he started playing more in flow, more relaxed, and I think in this case, in like talking about football metrics, in 6 months he doubled his market value, and he scored like I think 5 goals and 4 assists in quite a short period of time. So these are some examples of the players with whom I'm working individually.
No, fantastic to hear, because from outside, of course, people read on the press about all these stories about the players, but we don't realize that inside a football pitch or any sports court, we have this cauldron of background and how players are behaving. Sometimes things like we just said, like the pressure of the family makes a player a bit more selfish, and he's not passing the ball as he should. And so yeah, very, very interesting to know that. And taking this topic as well, when a young player comes into the industry, is an industry with a lot of pressures, as you already mentioned, a few elements. What would be the initial steps a young player needs to build to build his resilience, to start to cope with the pressure? What is perhaps initial advice in terms of mental performance for a young player that is arriving in the industry, for start to be a bit more mentally strong to face everything?
Okay.
Let's say a player that was just signed his professional contract, is transitioning from the academy to the first team.
Okay, so we say about 17,
18. Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't see. I don't work in stereotypes. Like there's a standard approach that every player can use, and they will play at their top level. Because if it was that, everybody was playing at the top level. So different player, different cultural backgrounds, personality, mental profile require different approaches.
Okay.
So it's tough to say that there's something that you can do at 17. What you can do, and I go back to the first pillar that I'm working on, try every day to work extra or as you want it on one of these 4 pillars. Identify what's the next 1% that you want to get and start working on that one. Because lots of players that I saw want to have like results instantly. Like if I can take 20% tomorrow, I will do 20% tomorrow. But it doesn't work like that. And I think consistency is one of the most neglected skills for football players. Because if you understand that of the importance of looking on the long path rather than short gains, you increase your chances of reaching much bigger levels than you can have just I need a small win now.
My next question would be related to perhaps pressures that are not exactly linked to the on-pitch performance, but we know that every day, especially young players or in the age players develop their career, there's a lot of influence of social media nowadays, and sometimes we see a lot of criticism, the haters on social media. It's even more invasive that in the past we had like a kind of the press, some headline. It was perhaps, comparing to today, easier to avoid. Have you ever faced problems related to that, or do you have any advice on how to work this question in the life of the athletes?
I was working with a player who immediately after the game was checking the comment section under the game to see if everybody says something about him. I call this an emotional roller coaster, because if you take your satisfaction from somebody in social media will say that you are top and you are here, then the next time when somebody will say something bad, you are symmetrically down. So that's why I call it the roller coaster, and it's not helpful for your career. I have this process with players where after each game, we put it as a learning process. I mean, in games, besides playing, we also test the level where we are now in order to identify what we can improve. And if a player managed to shift his focus from what's happening in the social media, where you cannot control what anybody can say anything there, and you start putting that focus on what I can do better, and day by day you develop this mindset, I promise you the impact of positive and negative will be much smaller. It will not be, you cannot detach completely, but let's say this roller coaster will be much more lighter.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Have you ever faced some athlete that, for example, some social media comment or things have developing on social media affected him or her like for weeks, for more than one game, or have you ever had in your hands like some issues like this?
Well, if you constantly check the social media to get your validation from there, definitely it will affect you on a longer period of time, because it goes back to where you take your validation from. It's not also healthy to have like always to take your validation from people who just cheer you up but doesn't give you objective feedback, because if everybody tells you, oh, you are great, and this is the problem with talented players that I've seen since they were a kid, everybody, you are talented, you are talented, you are talented, and it's difficult for them at a certain age to have around them somebody who's more objective, that maybe it will tell them that they are not that talented. And it's not about the talent, it's about how much you are willing to work in order to grow that talent, to refine it. And I saw a lot of young players, very talented players, who basically missed their career because of this, because they could not, they were neglecting any advice from a person with an objective point of view who maybe didn't acknowledge his talent.
Oh yeah, it's very important to have like at least one or two persons that give realistic views about. It's very hard because they are surrounded by people that are so excited as them about a career in football. So people are not
and
like.
And the problem is that sometimes those kind of people also give bad advices, like, no, you are not playing here because of the coach, or because of this, or because of that. And it shifted the players from the perspective from what I can do to become better to, it's because of them. It's because of them.
You mentioned about something about the relationships that they need to build with other teammates, with coaches. Would you say that is that the main challenge you have with players, or the most common challenge you find with players when you start working with them? What are the have you identified like common issues when you start working with players, and what are the most common issues, and what are the hardest ones to overcome? And
like you said, having good social connection within the team, it's really important. So if you were in a team with your best friend and three, let's say, random guys, with whom you would pass more in these small games?
Yeah, of course, the best friends. Yeah.
So that's why it's really important to develop the social connection within the team, especially if you just transfer to a new team.
That's true. Yeah. Simple and true. From my times as an amateur player, I still have a few traumas that I remember that I don't want to play like this weekly game because people here, they are very tough and I'm playing to have fun. Or even when I was like in organized football, in youth teams, and some teammates that were like just being trying to destabilize myself and saying things that still still are inside my mind. Today I look back, I see, oh, this doesn't make sense, but it's still like after being an adult and being in a different area, this is still it's in my mind. So yeah, what you just said just made me think about all the voices that are inside the mind of the players. Yeah.
Speaking about the voices, I think that's the next big challenge. If you want to win on the pitch, you need to win that internal game with yourself, because we all have that voice in our head that sometimes it's putting us down, sometimes it's lifting us up. So if you manage to work with yourself in order to make that voice your number one fan, and you being the one who supports you the most, who's focusing, who's this mindset that helps you focus on your personal development or the things that you can control, it increases your chances of winning on the pitch.
Oh, definitely. What's the average age of your clients? Like, are they, for example, 17, 18 or 24? Or do you have like players that are close to the end of their careers?
Well, it quite varies. I think the youngest is 17, and the oldest it's actually he's 24. He's close to retirement. Because the approaches are different. If we are talking about a young player, it's about about mainly the first pillar, about trying to do each day something to develop a little bit, that 1%. If you are talking about a player close to retirement, it's about helping him 1 or 2 years in advance identify and discover what will happen afterwards. Because I think there's an interesting statistics also in UK about a lot of players who end up broke. I think it's potentially it's around 40% of the players from Premier League who end up broke after 60%. Okay, so it's even higher. Yeah, and most of them tend to go into depression or use alcohol as a self-relief method, because they don't know the next step. And for a player, especially playing in top football, it's quite understandable, because your athletic identity is so high that you see yourself only a football player. So 1 or 2 years in advance before retirement, I work with a football player to help him acknowledge and to reduce his athletic identity, and help him acknowledge that he's also maybe a father, a brother, a husband. He also have different hobbies. He can discover his passion for, I don't know, for a line of work in football or something other than football, and to help him understand exactly what will happen the next day after football. Because if he manage to understand that, okay, now I stop in football, but the next day I know what to do, this transition will go much smoother and reduces the chances of going sideways. But if he has his identity like 90%, and tomorrow he stops football, he doesn't know who he is today.
Oh, that's true. And yeah, linked to that, like, do you face many players at this stage with regrets? And are these players also scared about the future? And how do you find them mentally when you start to work with them, with these players in that point of their careers?
We try to tackle it quite in advance. 1 or 2 years before. Still, they don't think about what will happen after. The athletic identity is still high, and we are slowly reducing the level and try to shift his focus also on other parts of his personal life and or business life, what will happen afterwards. So I didn't work with a player who, let's say, already finished his career and it's in he didn't thought about what he'll do afterwards, and it's in this let's call it I don't know if it's the right term, but maybe depression state or in high anxiety state that what am I today? So I try to tackle quite in advance. I didn't work with somebody who just retired and doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, because they do that like since they were children, teenagers, and finally overnight they, where do I go now? Yeah, they don't prepare. Yeah, no, must be a very tough challenge and even worse for them. Yeah,
that's why it's good to prepare it in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question is, for example, have you ever worked with a player, maybe not the the youngest ones, but someone in the middle of the career, that his mental performance was affected by those friends that give bad advice, or spouses that maybe were not playing a good role on their lives, or parents. Tell us like anything that you saw in that sense.
Yeah, I think quite often I see the challenges of friends, because especially if a player reaches a certain level, he earns a certain amount of money, and these so-called friends start popping around him and try to more or less take advantage, not necessarily of the money, but of his status. So let's go to this club because you can get a scene, or let's do this because you can afford it, or we invite you here because we need your face to help us attract more people around us. It's not easy to navigate this, because as a football player, because you need to be really careful. Most of the things that they are proposing gives you a certain level of dopamine, so and a certain level of enjoyment. And if you start to go on this feeling, on this road, you'll end up, I don't know, maybe going to bed late. You'll start neglecting the process that got you to the results that you have, and slowly your career starts to move in a downtrend direction. And if you keep this for a longer period of time, it takes more time to return to the process that got you to that high level.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Finally, it's not hard to guess that, like, based on what we see nowadays, like, people are paying more and more attention about mental questions, mental issues. Mental performance is I assume is going to be like something very, very important in the next, let's say, 10 years. But do you see any trend, any innovation, or are you able to anticipate like what are going to be like the main things in this area that you're going to deal with, or you or things that for example are going to be part of your work in the next 10 years, like looking ahead?
Well, I'm seeing, like you said, more awareness towards the mental part, because if you look at it on the four main pillars: physical, technical, tactical, and mentally, we reach a certain level on the physical part, technical part, and tactical part. So you can talk about innovations there, but the gaps are really small. We didn't tackle that much the mental part. So I think here there are quite good percentage that the player can gain in order to improve his performance. So that's why I'm thinking a lot of players will start working on the mental part in the near future, because you can see like good results if you start implementing some techniques, like, I don't know, certain types of visualizations, meditation, mental checks during games, how to stay in flow state. Like this will be, I think, maybe game changers from some players' career, and in the same time can give you that upper hand during games.
Fantastic. Okay, Vicentiu, thanks very much for being the first person interviewed in this new project, GPS Talks. I think a lot of people that watched this interview will benefit from your advice and from questions that you just brought to think and to discuss. I start thinking in a different angle, like even working on a daily basis with players and the industry. And yeah, so thanks very much for your time, for your advice, and hopefully we're gonna do a second edition in the near future.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and thank you very much for having me and for addressing these questions. Quite challenging, some of them, but I really enjoyed them.